clubhouse, follow me, what I say, you know, you need to do whatever you want to do. For reconciliation between the nations, that all people may together live in freedom, justice and peace. And at this time we think of our colleagues in humanity in the Ukraine and our brothers and sisters servicemen who are serving to help to preserve the peace. And we pray for all who in bereavement, disability and pain continue to suffer the consequences. We remember with thanksgiving and sorrow those whose lives in world wars and conflicts past and present have been given and taken away, especially those who were our comrades now. And now to mark that, we lay our wreaths at the memorial. Going down to the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
fun for us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before I start, talk about the Royal Air Force, you've got to remember a couple of things about me. The first is that, as far as I'm concerned, the RAF is the Cinderella of the two services, but like Cinderella, got two ugly sisters. And we've got a few of them here today. Now, I have to be careful what I say, because my daughter foolishly married an army officer. He's infantry. As long as you speak slowly, don't use big words, he's okay. We're all Anglian. But I'm learning a lot about the army and the regimental system, for which I'm getting much respect the more I get to know them. And I'm a great supporter of the regimental system. The other thing I should get straight is I'm a fighter pilot, and I now fly here with gliders for fun and teach people, and I really enjoy that. But you've got to get it in your mind that anybody who willingly jumps out of a service of aeroplane is completely bonkers, okay? So you've got to work from that principle. Now, before, I couldn't remember, because I'm getting to that age now, what I said to you all last year. So if I repeat myself, you'll forgive me, won't you, once you're a septuagenarian or whatever.
We've forgotten, yeah.
But, yeah, good point. You won't know, will you? It was like the old pilot who got into the cockpit and said to the young pilot, "Now, what have I come in here for? I've just forgotten." But anyway, but fortunately, John Riley came to my rescue in a way, because he sent me the first chapter of the book about Martin Lindsay, who was the pioneer who, with others, led the way in development of parachuting back in the 40s. And what a man! When will the book be out, by the way, John?
In a year's time.
In a year's time. So you'll have to wait for that. But the first chapter really sets the scene. But a lot of it I hadn't realised. For instance, in 1940, of course, we, the Brits, had watched what the Germans had done with Blitzkrieg and thought, wow, we should have some of that, at least what the more advanced people did. And this chap, Martin Lindsay, he was a polar explorer. So obviously he had guts and determination and drive, which is what held him in good stage, I think, for all of his parachute work. He was one of the first, and the early days of parachuting work were done up at Ringway, which is Manchester Airport. And of course the relationship with the RAF started straight away, because first they were most sensible themselves not to jump out of aeroplanes, but of course many of them had to. But they used Whitley bombers for the purpose, and that was because that was what's available. It wasn't necessarily it was because it was the best aircraft that could be used. And initially they decided to try different shapes of parachute and different release mechanisms, and to be able to jump out they had to wriggle away to the back of the turret, where there was a hole, sort of rear gunner's turret at the back of the aircraft, where there was a hole which a man could just about squeeze through, climbing over the rear gunner, much to his chagrin, and then leaping earthwards out the back there. I mean, you mentioned the guts needed to do that. He described his first jump as that he blacked out, and then a few seconds later he realised he was awake again, sitting in his harness. He described it as the second greatest thrill in a man's life. I don't really understand that.
What's the first?
Oh yeah, the first one must be landing after a successful sortie. And shortly after this period, in the early 40s, gliders were included. We mustn't forget the gliders. I mean, we're here on a gliding site. If you're going to produce effect, there are two ways of doing it. You parachute people in, or you indeed come in with gliders and drop them in. The only thing is, there's a lovely book called A Silent War about glider pilots. And one thing I hadn't realised, in the early design of gliders, they used to have it pilots, troops, howitzer, in that order from the front. Until the troops realised that when they crashed in the field, the howitzer went through the troops and then went through the pilots, which is not a good idea. So they redesigned them, and the aircrew didn't win on this one, so it became pilots, howitzer, crew, troops, just to make sure they could walk away from it. But the sad part was, like early flying, in the sort of turn of the century up to the First World War and everything, we lost a lot of people who just were trying to make the system work. And one thing that saddened me, I hadn't realised just how much work was done on designing the release mechanism for the parachute pack when the pilot, when the jumper jumped on his static line out the back of the aeroplane. That lost a lot of people because we didn't, for some reason, copy the Germans and steal their tricks. We obviously developed it all themselves. But of course they learned something from every incident, every loss of life. You know, this thing about test and adjust, they did that very well. So by the end of 1940, there were 500 soldiers qualified. They got their para wings apparently after 5 jumps. By the way, we used to do that as a fighter pilot. In the old days, I would get my wings, my para wings. It wasn't just my preference not to jump out of serviceable aeroplanes, but what they found was they were breaking more fighter pilots by training for it than they were ejecting from jets. Yeah. So we were banned from doing it, believe it or not. So none of us of my generation got our para wings. So eventually they made a bigger hole in the Whitley, so you wriggled down the back and there was a hole in the ground. It always reminds me of the balloons. I don't know if anybody has seen those balloons that we used to jump out of, 800 feet up, I think. The hole in the thing, if I'm all right, gentlemen, you're all nodding, was shaped like a coffin. So that made you cheerful for the first jump of the day. And you had to have a lot of confidence. One thing about the paras that I really respect, and I've worked with them through my career, is their guts, you know. When you do the para quaint course down at Aldershot, in my day, I did it as a cadet, they made you jump through gaps up about 20 feet in the air, gaps in bushes, you had to believe there was something you were going to land on the other side. And they said, just do it. And of course there was something, because they're not daft, but you had to believe it. And that is something that some people just haven't got the guts to take that trust and just go for it and then sort it out afterwards, if you see what I mean. Anyway, they used to apparently drop 8 paras in a stick over 10 seconds. Now this is really important because now, of course, the sticks are much longer and they're going out at quite a rate at the back of a Hercules. Or I see now that we're using the Atlas for that, aren't we, at Bryce Norton? The A400M?
Trial last week, sir.
Yeah, just hot news, fresh from Bryce Norton. So this new A400M, which is a political aeroplane, but we won't go there, it can carry a lot of paratroopers. The thing is, every aircraft that comes in, we've got to, with the blessing of the guys down at Bryce Norton, Army and Air Force, do trials to make sure it's safe for parachuting. I'll give you one example. I was the one who received the first new Hercules C-130J back in '99 at Arnhem. And everybody said, oh, well, we'll just do the jumps and everything. And of course, the J-Tube guys, the Joint Tactics Unit, said, no. They had to redo all of the jump parameters because the engines were different and the whole shape of the rear end was different. And it was just as well we did because we would have lost a lot of people otherwise. Let's have a quick look here. And of course, at this time, building up, there was also, of course, Sterling was part of this mob, loosely, about the early days of the SAS. And of course, they had a great interest in this as well. The famous raid they did was in February '41, was called Colossus, which was on a aqueduct in southern Italy.
That wasn't the SAS, that was the Paras.
That was the Paras. Yeah. So they did that jump there, which was one of the bravest things, which proved the concept, of course, as well, that they could get in and do that. So the point is, this was a great test of men and equipment, but mainly about willpower, because there were still people in the ministry who didn't believe in all this. But the pioneers pushed it all the way along, and they got great support, I must say, from the Royal Air Force as well. And talking about that, we've generally provided the aircraft out which you jump, but also the instructors. And I was delighted to see that we've started also training Army PTIs, physical training instructors, as jump instructors as well. So now it's become even more joint in that respect. and the first, in April 17, the first 8 PGIs since 1940 were given their instructor wings, which is great. Army, I'm talking about Army. So we've been dropping from various aircraft all the way through history. The most recent in my career, of course, have been the Hercules. The Hercules K models, the original ones, which marshals at Cambridge used to repair and made them bigger and everything, they were certainly the aircraft that went through my career. In 1967, I did my flying scholarship there, and they were being painted in RAF colours at Marshalls, and we flew them all the way until a few years ago. So what a job they did. Now we've got a problem because we've only got the J models, which are used for special forces, the SAS and others. And of course the government want to sack them and try and use something else, which would be a real shame, I think. So if you've got a vote on this, keep the Hercules for as long as we can. So this tradition has run on. I've never detected any angst between the Army and Air Force about who does what, because we both do our jobs very professionally. I may have mentioned to you last time, I only got into trouble twice when I was commanding the units that had all the Hercules in. One was when a navigator put in the wrong position and they dropped them off the coast of Bude over cloud. This was an SAS mission, and they only realised when they'd dropped them all out with their kit, that they dropped them in the wrong place. And the rescue helicopter was launched immediately and rescued them all. They lost all of their equipment. And I felt very, very sheepish when I phoned up the one-star brigadier boss of the SAS in London. And he just laughed and said, well, you know, that's why we train, isn't it? And he said, by the way, the guys thought it was part of the exercise anyway. And the second thing I had to apologise for was a chap called Adrian Freer, who was the brigadier, whose father, by the way, was an air marshal. So it must have been a nice chap.
Air Chief Marshal.
Sorry, Air Chief Marshal eventually, before he passed away. Yes. You know what they say, we all get promoted to the level of our incompetence. But there we go. But what happened with that one? There was a drop on Salisbury Plain by the lead guy on 70 Squadron, who was leading. And of course I have to have confidence that this just goes on day to day. Well, they dropped them, but on the wrong drop. So the brigadier and his team had to leg it, or tab I think is the language, up quite a long way to get to the rendezvous point. And that took a few beers to buy off the humility from, at least it was safe, they dropped them on the run, but it was the wrong run, unfortunately. So I had to make a few apologies on behalf of my aircrew occasionally. But overall though, the bottom line is the two services work very well together. They're now still doing all the trials as a joint unit down at Brize Norton, and I think the success of the parachute regiment, bear in mind we haven't done an active live wartime drop recently, have we? But the role still exists. Why? Because what it does, it really does first attract people into the service and into those regiments, but it also produces people of the material or sorts out or selects who are suitable to go on for special forces as well. In fact, without the para regiment, the SAS couldn't really exist for the people who join. But what I'm pleased to see is that the working relationship has never been stronger, and long may it be. So here's to the paras.
If I could make a point, please.
Oh, and the riposte I learned from being involved with the Army about only fools jumping out of perfectly serviceable aeroplanes was, well, there's not many of them in the Air Force. Oh, and by the way, the Navy have traditions. The Army has customs. This is the bit about the two ugly sisters. And the Air Force just has nasty little habits. we can live with that. Thank you so much for all that insight. Now we hand over to Brian. He's going to take us through the historical side of things. Over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Can everybody hear us? Is that better? Yeah. Yes. I can hear that one myself. Right. Thanks to John and the rest of the team for inviting us across today. As Brian just said, I'm going to talk to you about the historical side, which is going to talk about the history of RAF Saltby, or Saltby Airfield, and then we'll move on to what I call 156 as taxi drivers, the 314th Tactical Troop Carrier Group. So Saltby Airfield first opened in 1941, and it was a satellite base for RAF Cottesmore, which is just a few miles across the fields that way. It was the home of Bomber Command's number 14 Operational Training Unit. And as an OTU, it used to train bomber crews before they went into operational squadrons. At the time, the airfield didn't have any runways, it was just a grass field. And it operated the Hampden bombers initially, flying suitcases as they called them, and later replaced by Wellington bombers, which was becoming obsolete on the front line. They were operated here until August 43, when number 14 OTU left Saltby and Cottesmore and moved just down the road to RAF Market Harbour, still in Leicestershire. So when 14 OTU left Saltby, the plan was to upgrade the airfield to what we call a Class A airfield. And that was to give it 3 concrete runways, perimeter tracks, built four hangars, including communal and domestic sites, which were constructed to accommodate apparently 994 RAF and 112 WAF female personnel. So I don't know what the accommodation was like before that, but it sounds like it wasn't very good. So whilst the building work continued, Saltby also continued as a base, and it was selected as one of 24 airfields in the country to be the home of Horsa gliders. The Horsas, I don't know if any of you know, the nose section was built by Bolton and Paul factory in Norwich until about 1940, July 1940. When unfortunately the factory was bombed twice within a week from the Germans. After that, they moved the production to Melton, to the Midland Woodworking Company in Melton Mowbray. So the nose section for the Horsa was actually built just a few miles down the road. 32 Horsa gliders were towed over the airfield and were released by Whitley bombers, or Whitley tugs, and Albemarle tugs. And they were stowed on the airfield in ready for D-Day. And they was maintained by what we call number 32 Heavy Glider Maintenance Section. So while all this work was going on, they was looking at transferring the airfield from number 92 Bomber Group to number 5 Group. But in the meantime, a group of US engineers turned up at the base and carried out an inspection. And they liked it so much that the control was handed over from Bomber Command to the US 9th Air Force Troop Carrier Command. And on the 18th of December 43, RAF Saltby was officially known as United States Army Air Force Station 538. So by early 43, the work was complete, and the TCG, the Troop Carrier Group, moved in from North Africa. It consisted, this is the 314th Troop Carrier Group, it consisted of 4 squadrons, the 32nd, the 50th, the 61st and the 62nd Troop Carrier Squadrons. And they moved to Saltby between 20th Feb and the 6th of March 44, equipped with 2 different versions of the Dakota. The first one was the C-47 Skytrain, and the other was a C-53 Skytrooper. One of them was based on the passenger DC-3 Dakota, and the other one had the enlarged rear door and strengthened cabin floor so they can get jeeps in and guns and things like that. So within 6 weeks of arrival, they were taking part in the first combat ops while they was out in Italy. Excuse me. In July 43, they took part in what was known as Operation Husky, the invasion of Italy. And on the 9th of July, they dropped paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne, the US 82nd Airborne, and followed a couple of days later by a resupply mission. As part of this, the 314th was awarded a Distinguished Unit Citation for its part in the second mission in carrying the drop in bad weather conditions and under heavy attack from both ground and naval forces. Preparations for a second frontal attack in Northern Europe gained momentum, and as such, the 314th role in the Mediterranean ended, and they was tasked with moving to the UK. So they now transferred to 9th Air Force and became part of the 52nd Troop Carrier Wing, whose headquarters was just down the road at Cottesmore. So as a veteran of the Italian Combat Group, the Italian campaign, the 314th was immediately put into a new training programme. So as well as the 314th moving back to the UK, the US 82nd also came back to the UK, and they was also based in Leicestershire, actually in Leicester and a couple of villages out that way as well. As D-Day, Operation Overlord approached. Weekly exercise involved both the 314th and the 82nd, and they carried out exercises such as Exercise Dorothy and Tony. A much larger exercise called Eagle was carried out, and this involved all the troop carrier groups and squadrons that were planned to take part in D-Day. The 314th part in Exercise Eagle didn't actually go that well, but they did manage to successfully drop all the troops. But it was a great learning lesson for what was to come later on D-Day and then obviously Arnhem afterwards. For the Saltby crews, Operation Overlord actually began on the 5th of June, when as part of Operation Boston, Pathfinder aircraft departed from North Witham, again just down the road, just on the A1 there, followed shortly by 51 C-47s and 9 C-53s departing from Saltby. And they carried the troops of the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne, and they were dropped in Drop Zone N at Saint-Mary-Glise in France. All but one of the 314's aircraft managed to return back to Saltby, and 18 were badly damaged by flak and small arms fire. Miraculously, the 314th only experienced one fatality, and that was a pilot. However, his aircraft safely returned back to Saltby under the command of the co-pilot. On the 6th of June, 314th were again in action with the resupply mission as part of Operation Freeport, and 52 aircraft left Saltby, 13 of which aborted the mission before reaching France due to bad weather. And on the approach to the French coast, one aircraft was damaged by anti-aircraft fire from a friendly Allied ship. So you can always rely on the Navy. Now, I don't know if it's Royal Navy or American Navy, but both the same. For those that made it to France, they dropped their loads at the designated drop zone. However, unbeknown to them, the drop zone had been recaptured by the Germans. So most of the supplies that were dropped, unfortunately, fell into German hands. The Germans had also strengthened their anti-aircraft defences in the area, resulting in 3 aircraft being listed as missing, 30 suffering damage from flak, and resulting in 14 crew members missing and 4 others wounded. As a result of their actions, 314th were awarded their 2nd Distinguished Unit Citation. So that was D-Day. Move on now to Market Garden. So the next major mission for 314th was Operation Market, which was part of Market Garden. The group was tasked with delivering the 2nd, 3rd, 11th and 156 battalions of the British 1st Airborne Division. As part of Market, the 314th carried out 4 Market missions, but some of their crews were involved in glider ops. So Market number 1 took place on the 17th of September, when the 314th were tasked with providing 2 serials, A24 and A25, and a further 2 serials from the 61st Troop Carrier Group, just down the road at Barkston Heath. So the 4 squadrons here at Saltby each provided 36 aircraft, 2 squadrons in each serial. Serial A24 was made up of 32nd and 50th squadrons, and carrying the 2nd Battalion, and serial A25 was the 61st and 62nd squadrons, who carried the 3rd Battalion. So Chalk number 16 was piloted by Captain Clarence Anderson in serial number A24, and that was the lead aircraft, and that carried Lieutenant Colonel John Frost, sorry. The 1st Battalion was carried by the 14th and 59th Squadrons from Barkston Heath, whilst the HQ Battalion was carried by the 15th and 53rd, also from Barkston. So between 1:53 p.m. and 2 p.m, the 314th dropped 1,170 British paratroopers and 248 parapacks from an altitude. We died. Can you hear us? Someone working, is it? Can you hear us again? Sorry, what, I'll shout. So between 1:53 and 2 p.m, the 314th dropped 1,170 British paratroopers and 248 parapacks between altitudes of 700 to 900 feet. History records this as a textbook drop, and all 72 aircraft of the 314th returned safely to Saltby around 4 p.m. It was a tense day for the men of 156 back in Melton, who had been scheduled for the 2nd lift the following morning. Captain Tom Wainwright, who remembers seeing Market 1 formation from his barracks at Spinney, and having a premonition that all would not go well with this op. Jean French, who was dating at the time Corporal John Smith of Remy, who was attached to 156, recalls, on the morning of the Battle of Arnhem, we didn't know what was going on. All the paratroopers were confined to barracks. That morning, the sky was suddenly full of aircraft. The noise is something I will never forget. So the next day, 18th of September, 156 travelled the 10 miles from Melton to Saltby for a scheduled 8 AM takeoff as part of market number 2. But this was delayed to 11:20 due to fog. Again, the 314th were tasked with providing 72 aircraft in 2 serials, and the 315th two-carrier group at Spanhoe also provided the same. 156 were in serial A31 with the 32nd TCS, and the 50th two-carrier squadron provided the second flight with Chalks 619 to 636. The lead aircraft in serial 31 was Chalk 601, and this was piloted by the 32nd Squadron Commander, Major Halleck Wilson. It was accompanied by First Lieutenant Donald Reakin as co-pilot, Captain Harry Bones as navigator, Corporal Dominic Canatelli as crew chief, Staff Sergeant William Boyd as radio operator, and because it was a lead aircraft, they also had Sergeant John Ellis Jr. as the SCR 717 radar operator. On board this aircraft was the CO 156, Lieutenant Colonel Devu, with 16 troops from HQ Company and 3 from the Royal Corps Signal. Now, incidentally, the aircraft serial number, it was Chalk 601, but its serial number was 4315616. Now, whether that was an omen, don't know. In addition to the aircraft from Saltby, 7 horses were dispatched from Keyville in Wiltshire, carrying the battalion's jeeps and trailers with all the supplies, and there was a Hamel car that left Tarrant Rushton in Dorset carrying the 2 Brengan carriers. The 11th Battalion, who were also based in Melton, flew in serial number A32 with the 61st TCS, flying in Chalks 637 to 654, and the 62nd TCS in the second formation with Chalks 655 to 672. From Spanhoe, the 34th and 43rd Squadrons of the 315th Troop Carrier Group carried the 10th Battalion from Somerby, whilst the 309th and 10th Troop Carrier Squadrons carried the 4th Brigade HQ. This time, the drop zone for 156 was Drop Zone Yankee at Ginkle Heath. Unlike Market 1, the second mission for the 314th was no milk run. Obviously the Germans was expecting them this time. Flak from the German batteries hit several aircraft. On approach to the drop zone, a 50th TCS aircraft, the lead aircraft of the second wave in serial A31, was Chalk 619, and this was flown by Captain Leonard Ottaway, carrying a stick of 18 men from the 156 Support Company, and it was hit by German small arms fire. The left-hand engine and fuel tank were hit, and the belly of the aircraft started to burn. The aircraft left the formation, and the undercarriage was lowered, most probably from damage to the hydraulic system. To the others in the formation, it appeared as though the pilot, Captain Ottaway, tried to land the aircraft. But upon impact with the ground, just short of the drop zone, the fuel tanks exploded, one of the wings broke off, and the aircraft flipped over onto its back. The 6 crew members and the 18 paras from the support company of the medium machine gun platoon had no chance of survival. No parachutes were observed coming from the aircraft. This was the largest loss of life for any single aircraft from the 314. The members of the 156 machine gun platoon were Sergeant John Kinsley Smith, Corporal Owen Lilly, and Privates George Brownlow, Arthur Butler, Harold Clayton, John Clayton, Richard Fuller, Daniel George, George Gilliver, Harry Hotwood, Eric Johns, Richard Killingsworth, Harry Philpotts, Harold Stanier, Thomas Stevens, Patrick Taylor, George Tutton, and Joseph Wilson. Now all these guys are buried in the Yonkabos CWGZ cemetery at Nijmegen, and a memorial has been erected to the memory of Captain Ottaway's crew and the paratroopers near to the crash site. So the remaining 17 aircraft from the 50th TCS made their drop, and on the way back from the drop zone, Chalk 631 was in the unlucky position of position 13. This aircraft received a direct hit from the 20mm round, which entered through the aircraft belly, passing right through the companionway, just inches behind the pilots, and exited the aircraft through the roof. Although it left a huge gaping hole in the aircraft structure, no damage was done to the controls, and the aircraft made it back to Saltby. Aircraft from serial A32 formed by the 61st and 62nd Squadrons, carried the 11th Battalion, and they fared much worse. The lead aircraft of that serial, Chalk 637, was piloted by Lieutenant Campbell Smith. When on the inbound run to the drop zone, they received a direct hit from a German 88mm shell, ripping a large hole in the left wing. Luckily, it was still flyable. Directly behind Chalk 637 was Chalk 639, piloted by First Lieutenant Max Ferguson. And prior to the green light going on, the aircraft was caught in a hail of enemy gunfire in the area of Hertogenbosch, I think it is. Large calibre shells pierced the fuselage, exploding inside the aircraft, with shell fragments ripping and tearing the fuselage in all directions. The crew chief, Corporal Joseph Novak, was standing on a small sheet of armour plate at the rear of the fuselage when a large shell burst through the cargo door and exploded in front of him, and he was injured in the abdomen. On reaching the drop zone, several of the paras were also injured, some seriously. Many managed to jump, some with injuries, but 3 were so severely injured they could not jump. Corporal Einerson was the radio operator and was standing in the companionway between the pilot and co-pilot when a 50mm calibre machine gun bullet passed through the bottom of the aircraft, ripping through his jacket sleeve and passing out through the roof at the top of the aircraft. The main cabin was covered and blood splattered everywhere, and the co-pilot and radio operator worked frantically to bandage up the wound while returning from the drop zone. Every available bandage was used, and more were needed. The captain, First Lieutenant Max Ferguson, managed to get the aircraft back safely to England and made an emergency landing at RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, where the wounded were removed and taken to the 65th General Hospital at Boatsdale, between Diss and Bury St Edmunds. The crew remained at Woodbridge overnight, and after examination, their aircraft returned to Saltby, where it was photographed and repaired. This aircraft was the most severely damaged airframe the squadron had experienced in over 17 months of combat ops. In total, 4 aircraft from Saltby failed to return, 6 received damage, and a further 2 from Spano also failed to return. Now, Operations Market 3 and 4 was taking the poles out. Operation 3 was the first mission for the poles, and number 4 was the resupply. So, thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yes. Part of my army career was based at Munster in Germany,
Yeah.
and I was in the military band. And on the 16th anniversary, we paraded on Gingle Heath at the drop. And EDE, where we were,
Yeah.
and the villagers wouldn't let us go back to Germany. They billeted us in the village hall and wined and dined us over the weekend. And we all had a job to get in the 3 tonners to go back to Germany the following
We lifted him,
Sunday.
were you?
Well, we got thrown in the back.
So a couple of days ago, I was this was dropped on me by John. He asked because it was the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War that we'd maybe we could do a little talk about that. And so basically, I put something little together. I've got Dave as well with me. The reason Dave's here is we went on 2 different routes. I came down with 5 Infantry Brigade, and Dave came down with we call it 3 para battle group, don't we?
3 para battle group,
Because
literally 3 commando.
yeah, because the Marines will know everybody's same weather really. So I'll just go quickly into this. The short history of the Falklands conflict, and then it's only a few pages, and basically it just goes over the highlights of everything, and then we'll go on to the trip through the Falklands. Dave doing the northern route, I doing the southern route. So the Falklands conflict was a short, undeclared war between Argentina and Britain over the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands, known as the Isles Malvinas in Argentina, South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. The conflict lasted 74 days and cost over 900 lives. The British overseas territory is located in the South Atlantic, 8,000 miles from Britain. Sovereignty in all the islands has been contested by Argentina since 1833. Most Falkland Islanders were of British descent and opposed the Argentinian claim. In 1982, Argentina decided to take control of the islands by force. Argentina had already established unauthorised but unopposed presence in the South Sandwich Islands in 1976. Now Argentinian forces occupied the Falkland Islands from the 2nd of April and South Georgia from the 3rd of April, a move condemned by the United Nations. The British governor of the Falklands, Sir Rex Hunt, was deported and repatriated to Britain along with Naval Party 8901. That's an important group of Marines. That they were the ones that were actually stationed down there. But later on in the story, we'll tell a little twist with that. So Naval Party 8901, a small contingent of Royal Marines who defended the islands before being forced to surrender. A point when they got repatriated, Naval Party 8901 sailed back with a task force. So yeah, they joined up again and came back down to fight. President Galtieri appointed General Mario Mendez as governor of the islands and commander of the Argentinian forces, and he was deployed to defend them. In the weeks that followed, many restrictions were imposed on the islanders. Some were forcibly deported, others were incarcerated for weeks. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher authorised a military operation codenamed Corporate to retake the islands. It was the first since the Second World War in which all branches of the British Armed Forces deployed simultaneously. Within days, a British task force comprising 127 warships, submarines and requisitioned merchant ships carrying troops, aircraft and equipment set sail for the South Atlantic. Operation Parakeet returned South Georgia to British control on April 25th. The task force then returned its attention to the retaking the Falklands. On the 30th of April, the task force imposed a 200-mile total exclusion zone around the Falkland Islands, prohibiting all aircraft and ships for any country from entering. British Special Forces, the Royal Air Force and Fleet Air Arm attacked Argentinian ships and defences. 2 days later, the Royal Naval submarine HMS Conqueror sank Argentinian cruiser with the loss of over 300 of their crew. That was the Belgrano. Argentina responded quickly on the 4th of May when the Royal Navy destroyer HMS Sheffield was hit by an AM-39 Exocet cruise missile fired from an Argentinian submarine Etendard. I was talking to Mike and Lynn about this. I have a photo when we got escorted in on the Canberra, when we swapped to the Canberra from the QE2. The escort ships had helicopters flying behind the ship, because what Exocet primarily does is go for the highest point of the ship. It's usually like the control tower. The bridge. The bridge. So when these helicopter pilots were unbelievable. They'd be hanging behind the ship, and if there's a threat of an Exocet, they would actually go fly above the ship, which to the Exocet that would be the highest point of the ship then. When the Exocets came in, they would just pop up and the Exocets would fly past, and that was it. So this was crazy what they were doing. When the Sheffield was hit, 20 were killed in the explosion, the result of fire which destroyed the ship. The Argentinian Air Force continued to attack British ships with Exocet missiles and bombs, causing many casualties. In total, 7 ships were lost and others were seriously damaged due to the conflict. Attacks on land and logistics ships and the RF Sir Tristram, 24th of May, a merchant container, the Atlantic Convey on the 25th were particularly devastating. Nevertheless, a task force landed 4,000 troops on the port of San Carlos in Ajax Bay in East Falkland on the 21st of May onwards. They faced a numerically superior but largely conscripted Argentinian army. Lack of cover and air superiority forced the British to attack Argentinian positions by night. Goose Green was the first settlement to be taken by British forces on the 28th and 29th of May. The 2nd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, fought during which his commander, Lieutenant Colonel H. Jones, was killed. Colonel Jones was one of the 2 soldiers to receive a posthumous award of the Victoria Cross for gallantry during the conflict. The other, Sergeant Ian Mackay, was killed during the Battle of Mount Longdon on the 11th and 12th of June. Ian was a good friend of my brother, Tony. My brother was 3 R&B Company. He was a colour sergeant down in the Falklands. We used to drink up in a place called Church Crookham on a Wednesday night. That's where the officers and sergeants, non-commissioned officers...
We weren't allowed up there.
You weren't up there because you weren't...
We weren't worthy.
No, I was, because I had a brother. Anyway, yeah, so he's an absolutely amazing guy. and absolutely, what he did was unbelievable. I don't know if you know what Ian Mackay did when he jumped in. He took a machine gun post out. The machine gun post was pinning down, I know Dave will tell you a bit more about this, it was pinning down the troops there, so B Company 3 Para couldn't advance up there along them. Ian went up on his own, took a couple of men with him. They eventually got pinged and a radio operator and that, so he went up on his own, pulled 2 grenades and jumped in the gun emplacement and took the Argentinian gun out, but obviously sacrificed his life. Anyway. So British troops faced an advance of 56 miles across East Falkland through difficult terrain, enemy minefields and hostile weather conditions to the island's capital Port Stanley. Half of the troops completed the march on foot after the helicopters that were supposed to transport them were lost on board the SS Atlantic Conveyor. So yeah, that's why these lads ended up tabbing over there. One of the most famous images of the conflict was taken by the Royal Marines photographer Petty Officer Pete Holgate. Sorry, I'm shaking there. It shows Corporal Peter Robinson yomping to Port Stanley with the Union flag fixed to his radio antennae. There's now a statue down there at South Sea of Peter Robinson, the Yomper it's called. It's fantastic to see if you're ever down there. So the yomping, the media coverage of the war popularised the term yomp. That's a Marine word, by the way. It doesn't really mean, we don't know what it means, but there's some things we've made our own versions of. Your own pace, your own marching pace. That's what we called it, because they couldn't keep up with us, could they? The Paras tab. We have a tactical advance to battle, or in our case now, tactical advance to beer, isn't it? Yeah. After fierce fighting in the mountains overlooking Port Stanley, Argentinian forces surrendered on the 14th of June. There's one more. British troops arrived in Port Stanley the same day to an enthusiastic welcome from the islanders. I'll let Dave tell that story, because it wasn't what you're seeing on the media when the Marines were raising the flag and they were the ones first in. What they did was, well, I'll briefly tell you, you can tell them more, Dave. 2 para went in, they raised the flag. About a day before the Marines got there, they were ordered out. They took the flag down from Government House, and then Naval Party 8901, who were the ones who lost the islands in the first place, raised the flag. So that's the famous picture you see. So over 11,000 Argentinian troops were disarmed and repatriated to Argentina. The British retook control of the South Sandwich Islands. 907 lives were lost during the conflict, 649 Argentinian, 255 British and 3 Falkland Islanders. Today the islands are British overseas territories under the protection of the British forces South Atlantic Islands. The dispute with Argentina is still unresolved. So that's the basic short history on the Falklands War. So Dave, do you want to come in? Because Dave went with the first group.
Yeah, we'll carry on from there.
Go on, Aaron.
I'm a bit of a strange one, you probably gathered that already. I just transferred from the 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, in March 1982 to join 9 Squadron, because I like blowing things up. So when...
Didn't explain what 9 Squadron is. It's now
9 Parachute Squadron Royal Engineers. Sorry.
We do all the engineer tasks for the infantry.
Yep. And what happened was that when 3 Para were tasked to go down the Falklands, I was sick as a parrot. All my friends have gone. I'm now with a new set of guys called 2 Troop 9th Parachute Squadron Royal Engineers.
Yeah. There you go. Paras with brains.
Charlie here was in 3 Troop, who should have gone down with 3 Para.
Yes.
But unfortunately they didn't.
We're under strength.
What they said was that the Marines of 5-9 Commando Squadron, independent for the use of, useless. Don't take all this. They said that they could supply engineer support to the 3rd Battalion. They moved off, and what were you doing, Charlie, while we were waiting to go?
Watching Coronation Street, I think.
Yep. 2 Troop were now attached to 2 Para. So we went down to, well, after quite a few days twiddling our thumbs, getting told, lunchtime, be on parade. You're going this afternoon, be on parade. You're going tonight. back to the beds, watched Coronation Street, prayed again at 5 o'clock, ready to go. We're going tomorrow morning. So it's about 4 or 5 days, well, nights that we've got no money because we've already spent our money, going to the bank saying, could you lend me £10 so I can have a few beers tonight? It's my last day. Give them the money, drink beer, back again the next day, and again. Then finally, they said, you're going. So 2 troop moved across to the Norland. The Norland's a North Sea ferry. Not actually a flat bottom boat, but near enough. So if you go into the deep sea, you do a bit of rocking. We sailed away, and what's Charlie doing while we're sailing to war?
Probably in the pub.
We sailed down to the Ascension Islands. On the boat, you see all the pictures. We're doing training, various other things. Since I transferred from 3-power, I knew how to use an 84mm Carl Gustaf recorderless anti-tank gun. 36 pound of useless metal. Why me? Because I know how to use it from being X3 power. While we're down there, they said, right, Marines, as in the commandos, cannot supply engineer support to 3-power. So suddenly 2 troop, who our working group is 2-power, got moved onto the Canberra with 3-power. I'm seeing all my mates here. Great fun. No 84. I'm now a sapper. Rifle. Come on then, get it. My section commander goes, Dave, you like your weapons? Here's a .30 Browning machine gun. Here's a book, how to use it. Looked at the gun, 1942. Oh dear. Read through it, worked how to use it, flattering away, yes, that works. Then we got nearer down to the Falklands. It's like we're going to now D-deck from the Canberra onto the Fearless. This is my 3rd boat now. Oh, come on. Getting seasick. Then, 21st of May, what do? Get in the landing craft. Oh, great. Engineers, you are first. Always the thing. Engineers, first in, last out. Right. We're going to get on the beach first. We're going to clear all the mines. We're going to kill everybody. What happens? Our landing craft gets stuck on a shoal. The rest of 3-power are going around us to Port San Carlos. We're stuck going up. They want us. We can't get there. He finally moves off, gets in. The Marine said, on the boat operators, you won't get your feet wet. Wrong. So from day 1, week 1 of the war, we're wet. Really happy with the Marines. You might gather that I don't really like them, but hey ho. So we went onto the beach. Good old, I can't see it here, Port San Carlos. Right at the top end there. The next day, you know it's Bomb Alley. Because while we're doing engineering work, trying to find mines that they weren't, with the aircraft flying around, so I had a fantastic display of the fireworks going off. Bombs going bang, ships firing the anti-aircraft, sea slug missiles taking out aircraft, the lot. Really good view. We're on top of a mountain, on a little knoll, watching it, normal thing, cup of tea in hand, fag, and wow, look at that. Aircraft comes towards us, on my gun, 1942, let's chug some rounds at it. So you had that many rounds going at this poor aircraft. I don't think I hit it. I know I hit the chimney pot on the house next to me. Hey ho, it's one of those things. Then after a few days, we saw the big Argonaut going up in flames, everything else. Then a couple of days later, woke up in the morning. Where's the ships? Where are they? They've buggered off. Boss has come out, right guys, good old thing, typical army. You're here, Stanley's there. Looks like we're walking. Well, tabbing. Tabbing gets you there faster with heavier weight compared to yomping. So we said, okay, so you can see our route, straight across really. Normal thing, we're patrolling, we're consolidating, patrols will go out, see if there's any minefields, see any naughty people, yes, so we'll evict them. Didn't see anybody. We still carried on tabbing all the way till we get to Estancia House. Lovely place, and we get told 5 Brigade are coming soon, we're going to get stuck in. And what happens next?
Oh yeah. So we got mobilised. We set sail on the 12th of May down to the Falklands. We landed. We crossed ship to the Canberra at South Georgia, and we ended up 4 days later up in San Carlos, where it's quite safe. The bridgehead had been obviously established for a while. Obviously the lads had bugged out. They were headed off to Estancia. We were in San Carlos area for a couple of days. Then we were, I don't know what it was, but I think the guards wanted to get to Stanley before the Paras. There was a big race going on. So the decision was made to 3 Troop 9 Para Squadron we were engineer support for the 2 Scots Guards and the Welsh Guards as well. So the decision was made to take the troops around by ship to Bluff Cove. I went round on the Intrepid, HMS Intrepid, which is a salt ship. A couple of miles out from Lively Island, which is round here. We got onto the landing craft still, and we left the back of the ship. We were supposed to be only on it for about 40 minutes. What happened was some flares went up from one of our own ships. They hadn't been told that we were in the area. We thought it was flares from the Argentinians on the coast, on the defences on the coast. So they made the decision to bug out of range from mortars and things. So we actually spent 7.5 hours on these LCUs in the South Atlantic at night. Horrendous weather, washing over, everybody was soaking. There's lots of the Scots Guards went down with hypothermia. Yeah, so that was probably one of the worst nights of my life, being on them. We eventually got to Bluff Cove next morning, about 6 in the morning, down to here, where 3 Troop. We'd one of the lads had done a little recce, and he got us a nice bit of accommodation in one of the sheep sheds. It smelled awful, but it was lovely and dry. We took over from 2 Para who'd just been on Goose Green, and these are the lads we used to drink downtown with in Aldershot, and they were just different people from these young happy lads we were drinking with in the Aldershot before the war started. These guys were like battle shot, you know what I mean, vacant. You shout the name and they just sort of look at you like, okay. When we moved into the sheep shed, they had to bug out. They pushed on up to follow on from 3 Para onto Wireless Ridge. That was their plan. So they gave up their nice warm accommodation for us. So we spent the next 3 or 4 days there, and some of our duties were we split into half sections, 4 men, and because the Scots Guards their objective was to take out Mount Tumbledown. The half sections of 9 Squadron, we were going up and recceing round the bottom of the base of Mount Tumbledown, looking for the minefield defences. One of the ones I was out on one night, it was a 3-day patrol, went a 72-hour patrol to obviously to map areas where the minefields were. We got some Italian mines. We didn't know what they were, so we brought them back live for intelligence to sort of look at. So that was a nice little trip back. But we'd seen the Skyhawks going in, which done the attack on the Galahad and Tristram. There was a couple of sorties went in. The first one got through. As we were coming back in, we watched the aircraft go over Stanley, come back behind the mountain, Sapper Hill and everything, and come in and do the attack on the ships, which it was quite horrible to watch. We lost 2 of our lads on that, on the Galahad. And then basically after that, we got back, give information about the minefields, and then we were then choppered up towards the base of Mount Tumbledown. And it was around on the 13th, 14th, when the Scots Guards went in. We went in on the Tumbledown, and that was, mind you, there'd been a big battle the night before. Dave will tell you about that on the 12th. But basically, the Scots Guards was possibly the last action. There might have been someone Sapper Hill with the Gurkhas about the same time, because there was a few attacks going in, and the surrender came on the 14th. But Dave, yeah, you went from the Stanch House, didn't you? Yeah.
As I was saying, we were in a Stanshire house. We were expecting 5 Brigade to come fairly soon, and we were going to attack fairly early in the first week of June. We're all geared up, we've done our patrols, we've been out checking minefields like Charlie says, we're walking back with anti-personnel mines, or even a few of us, anti-tank mines just stuck down our smocks, going to a stanchion, working out how we defuse it. We worked out, nobody got hurt, so obviously we're really good at doing bomb disposal. Then we got told we are going to attack Mount London. The recce's were done, we knew what we were doing. I'm still there, being the engineer support with my 1942 it's an what was it, an L4A6 1942 Browning machine gun. 3-pound wanted fire support. They had various gun positions, so somehow I got, what's the wording? Army volunteered. Ray, you're going to go with B Company to their mortars. You're going to go, I can't remember the exact name where we're going to go. It's something like long stop or something like that, because all of the code words were all rugby terms. And I was going to go in front of the mortar positions because they knew there were some guns on Mount, what was it? Mount Kent, I think it was, or might have been one of the others, who could be shooting at the mortars, so I had to give them covering fire. The night was the longest tab ever because you're walking about 10 metres, you stop. You've got a big gun, a big pack. We weren't walking around with little things, we were walking around with about £100 worth of weight on our backs and our ammunition and our ammo pouches. Hardly any food, no sleeping bags because we wanted ammunition. So we're all loaded down every 10 minutes, or 10 metres, 20 metres, 50 metres. You get down, you're getting up. The ground there is like the tussock grass in Wales, hard to walk on. It's horrendous, and we were doing it time and time and time again, all very quiet. You go on to our positions, all quiet, get things set up. People will go out and do little patrols, ready for the kick-off on the start line. We were there, we were told we were going to do a quiet attack, so that we would be the first ones to attack. We had no fire support, nothing, because we were going to do it like that. Unfortunately, somebody stood on an anti-personnel mine. Then all hell broke loose, literally saying, there's gunfire everywhere. The mortars going off, their artillery shells, our guys going in. I'm only about 1,000 metres away from the initial attack. So I'm thinking, I should be there. People are going out, you hear the radio, all the orders, what's happening, and you're all there geared up, and I've got to keep an eye on this gun that's over there somewhere. It wasn't. Marines did their attack. They had gunfire, they had mortars, 105s, they had the Harriers doing a strike in, well, the ships flying into them. We're thinking, all we've got is our mortars, but being airborne, we can do it. Going through, like Charlie said, it ended up being little firefights, little groups of men, because you all have a big plan of what you're going to do, but it's little groups of half sections, 6 men, sometimes only 3. Well, that bunker's shooting at me, I'm taking that out because he's taking out my friends. So little groups were just disappearing and deal with the positions all over London. We got told, oh, isn't that many there, probably about a company. Company, roughly about 200 men. No, it seemed like there was bloody thousands of them. Big exaggeration, but it was sparks, because all you could see at night was the sparks coming towards you. And you can just see our tracer going towards the bunkers. So during the firefights, we had various people moving off. I get shouted because he needed my gun, because I had plenty of ammunition, because .30 was completely different to the 7.62 that what we were using, and I had belts of it all over the place. So I moved forward, went about another 500 metres, then there were people saying, right, if you see sparks, that's the incoming. Shoot at those sparks. So, playtime. And it's all it was. You could say, it's wrong to say it's playtime, but it was. You knew exactly what you're aiming for. You knew roughly where people were because the radio was next to you. And also you had people shouting in your ear what's occurring, what to fire up, stop, whatever. But everything was all small units. The whole plan had gone out the window. I said, Ian Mackay, when he did his bit, no, hats off to him. He was excellent. There's a lot of other people that you don't hear about who also did little things. Oh, I've had enough of that with that trench. Have some. People did a lot of mad things there.
A lot of bravery there, wasn't
Yeah. We'd done it, and at the end, quite a few of us got killed. Quite a few friends, I'm afraid, died. Quite a few of them died, but we gave their dead the same amount of respect as our dead when we moved them from, because we were moving off the mountain into pre-dug trenches to bury them, because you can't have them lying around. Then the next 2 days of getting shelled, we got told, right, next attack is Wireless Ridge. This time we were cold, because we didn't have any sleeping bags, hardly any food, because the main priority is ammunition, and also to get our wounded and their wounded back to safety. So we're quite cold. A lot of people are either finding the Argentine sleeping bags or their blankets, because that's something that's all they had. Few people decided to use the body bags. Bit morbid, but it kept you warm and it kept you dry. And that's the main thing you want to survive about, is being warm and dry. The rations, when we did get them, they went down very quickly. Again, like Charlie says, everybody had that 1,000-metre stare. You just completely, head is gone. Then we got told that attack onto Wireless Ridge is going to be tomorrow. But what we do tonight is give them a firepower demonstration. So we had all our GPMGs of 3 power, 2 power. We had some scimitars. We had my 30. We had Milan. We had artillery support, the mortars, and the naval ships doing fire support. For about an hour, we just shot anywhere on Wireless Ridge. Anywhere. Just let them know we've got plenty of ammunition. Let them know that we're ready for it. Unfortunately, nothing happened. We just carried on over Wireless Ridge. Then somebody shouted out, "There's a white flag flying over Stanley." Helmet off, Moonberry, cap badge, left ear, the swagger walk there. So he tamped into Stanley. You've all seen, like Charlie was saying, the person with that Union Jack on his radio. Well, we were in Moody Brick Barracks, watching him coming off the hill. Yeah, because we were told to stop, because the Marines had to get into Stanley, even though 2 and 3 power were there first. But hey ho, it's a Marines' war, wasn't it? We got into Stanley. We found accommodation. Not a problem there. We found anywhere that could put blokes to sleep, because we were tired, wet, cold, hungry, you name it, that was it. For a few days, you could say Stanley was a bit of not actually a Wild West show, but it was very close to it. Because you still have the Argentine prisoners still walking through, because they're going to be put up to Stanley airfield. We're there, gungy, haven't had a bath in what, 7, 8 weeks.
You're on the Falklands now.
Well, true. Let's have a shower tonight. But we were just dirty and smelly. They were worse off than us. The poor guys, you don't want to feel sorry for them, but you have to, because they were just young kids, same as what we were. A lot of us were early 20s.
There were conscripts.
There were conscripts forced to join
at the
in.
front. The regulars were at the back, and if the conscripts killed these kids, some of them about 16-year-old, they didn't fight. They were shot in the back. Simple as that.
By their officers.
Simple as that.
Yeah. So we're in Stanley. The Marines come down, as you saw. Government House. We would have put our flag up. No, they had to take our flag down. Put their one up. And we're there giving it hurrah for the Marines. Hey ho. Then we got our act together. We'd searched the place out for munitions. The Argentine were repatriated back to Was it? Oh, Argentina, wasn't it? While we were there, we had church services to remember our fallen. £2 a big one, £3 a big one. We were clearing up. Near where we were was their ex-ration store. The Argentines, part of the ration was little tots of whiskey or brandy.
In the officers.
On the officers' ration packs. Well, being engineers, we could have searched this place first, haven't we? Make sure there's no booby traps or anything. You're fine. It's safe, guys. Then £2, £3, and the Marines left. Well, my troop, 2 troop, although we're meant to be with £2 and we're working with £3 and being to hell and back with them, that's a good book to read. We were left. So we're doing searching, clearing munitions. All the battalions are gone. Plenty of rations left. All fantastic. Not only had the Brit rations, the general service rations, Arctic rations, with the Argentine good steak tray bentos in nice rich gravy. Oh, stomachs didn't like that stuff. But we carried on searching. Did our bit. We're in the middle of a minefield one day. Like you'd are, just clearing mines. That's what we engineers do. Bloke comes up. Index. Index. No, finished. War's finished. Well, yeah, we know that, but we've still got mines to do. No, not covered now. And apart from that, in a half an hour's time, you're going to be on that boat sailing back to UK. So, there you go. Nice mine. Exit stage left. Back to where we were staying. Get all our kit, all our Gucci kit, sort of weapons out. Although not British Army issue, we acquired. Might come in handy one day. Next war, hide them in your sea kit bag. Got on this boat, sailed to Ascension Islands. Then we were told, right, 2 and 3 power. Got back to Aldershot. Oh, there's men are now in nick because they had all these captured illegal weapons. Get rid of it. Over the side of the boat. All around Ascension Islands, it's the biggest arsenal ever. People were crying, throwing these weapons away. Lovely weapons, pistols, Gucci version of the SLR, the FNALs. I had a thing called a Falcon submachine gun. Oh, splash, tears. When we did fly into Rise Norton, RMPs and the, we call it customs. Go on, guys, on you go. On transport. Can I go back to Ascension? Right, and I'm going to pass you on to Charlie.
Yeah. So basically, when we got, obviously when the ceasefire was on the 14th, 3 troop, we were pulled back with the Scots Guards back to Fitzroy. I think 75% of us had trench foot, so we're getting treated with that. And you don't know what it is. We've been walking on blocks of frozen ice for like days because you lose all the sensation, everything. But when you get back in the warmth and you start getting the blood starts flowing back to your toes and things and that, it's the most horrendous pain. So like I say, once you recover from that, I had to go and see my brother up in Port Stanley because he was with 3 Para, Ross Road West. Eventually got to see him, but I had to pretend I could walk on these stumps, you know what I mean. But eventually got to see him, and when with him being a colour sergeant, he requisitioned all his Argentinian whiskey, and we got absolutely rat-assed on it. And then we went down to Cable and Wireless in the Cable and Wireless, you had no phones or anything. Cable and Wireless is the preferred way of communicating around the world. And we sent my mum a telegram which said we were both safe and we'd be seeing her soon. And she died 3 years ago, and a week before she died, she gave me the telegram back. So that was lovely. But anyway, that's
One more bit.
okay.
One more bit. Sorry to bore you.
Well, we should hear when he's had a drink.
When I start, I can't finish. That's it, thank you.
Call him in the spare, yeah.
Yeah. While we're down, just remembered, while we're down at Stanley, the Argentine prisoners were taking them back onto the boats. But engineers, we're told, find any officer and relieve him of his map case. Inside, hopefully, you'll find maps, because all the engineers are after was the minefield maps. That's what we wanted. And I had a little chat with an Argentine officer. He didn't really want me to give me his map case, but when he got a loaded SMG pointed at his left nostril, they're quite happy to give it to you. I made sure he had his own personal effects back first, obviously. But I always thought, bit of a keepsake, map case. All I use it for now is me spare rations. That's me finished now, thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing it to life. It's really light in the real war. Thank you, David, and thank you, Charlie. Thank you very much. Well done.
You're not there tonight, are you, Brian?
No. No, we'll give it a miss.
I'm off, all right.
Hey, go on.
Yeah.
See you in the morning.
Bye then. Yeah.
Best BDM though.